Welcome to another lived history. Today we dive into the crazy wedding nights during the Victorian era. In the meantime, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are passionate about these historical curiosities. Now let's start. In the labyrinth of Victorian obsessions with appearance and health, a practice emerges as curious as it is revealing: the use of merkins, pubic wigs. Born in response to epidemics of lice and venereal disease, which led many to shave their pubic hair, these prostheses served to mask the physical consequences of infections, but also to maintain an aesthetic ideal. Buying a merkin was not something for the shy. They were sold by specialized barbers, often in discreet locations. In addition to having a hygienic function, they were a sign of status, a symbol that those who wore them had taste, means, and secrets to hide. The Victorian era was dominated by an obsessive moral control over everything related to sexuality. Contraceptive methods were considered immoral and even works of the devil. Procreation was seen as divine will, and any attempt to interfere with it was suspect. Medicine at the time, still in its infancy, fostered mistrust and fear. Thus, many couples accepted pregnancy as an inevitable consequence of marriage. The wedding night was not only full of emotional expectations, but also shrouded in superstition. Amulets, herbs, and talismans were used to ensure fertility and ward off the evil eye. Silver rings, lavender under the pillow, rosemary in the bride's hair, gestures that mixed pagan rituals and Christian beliefs. Omens also played a role. A black cat was a sign of bad luck, while a light rain was seen as a blessing. For young women, marriage was presented as the pinnacle of their destiny. Submission to their husbands was a sacred duty, and female sexual pleasure a taboo subject. Mothers or manuals of behavior taught that on the wedding night, the bride had to be passive, resigned, dignified. Sex was not seen as an act of love, but as a marital obligation. Woman was considered a vessel for procreation. Virtue, chastity, modesty, these were the praised qualities. Communication about desires or discomfort was practically non-existent. This consolidated the gap between the sexes and fueled the idea that the woman's body belonged more to the family and society than to herself. Female virginity was a symbol of honor. During the first night, it was customary to spread a white sheet on the bed, and the expected blood was the proof of purity. Sometimes those sheets were even shown, almost like family trophies. An enormous pressure fell on the brides, completely ignoring the fact that not all of them bleed at the first experience. Victorian society produced manuals for every aspect of life. Marriage was no exception. Titles like The Perfect Wife and Conjugal Duty instructed women on how to be exemplary wives. Much was said about submission, almost nothing about intimacy and mutual pleasure. But in secret salons and hidden pages, a more daring literature circulated. Novels that spoke of love, desire, and female freedom. Works read in secret, which offered an alternative vision, a world where women could be subjects and not objects. Authors like George Sand became symbols of cultural rebellion, even if never openly declared. The first night was not just a physical encounter. It was often a clash of ignorance, expectations, and fears. In the absence of sexual education, The bedroom became the scene of misunderstandings, anxiety, and sometimes real suffering. The nuptial bed was more of a battlefield than a bed of love. And so, at the end of this journey through the folds of time, we find ourselves with a different look at the past. Less romantic, perhaps, but more authentic. The wedding night in the Victorian era, often shrouded in an aura of mystery and idealization, it actually turns out to be a faithful mirror of the contradictions and paradoxes of the society of the time. A moment that, instead of celebrating the freedom of love, often became a theater of social conventions, unspoken fears, deeply rooted taboos, and pre-established roles. Behind the veils, the scented candles, the white sheets, and the forced smiles, there was a universe of family pressures, personal anxieties, medical ignorance, and religious morality. A universe in which the female body was more possessed than known, more controlled than respected. Where pleasure was a marginal concept, and desire, especially female desire, was relegated to the shadows, whispered in forbidden novels and stolen confidences between friends. And yet, despite everything, in those rooms full of waiting and silence, something was moving. A slow awakening, often suffocated, but unstoppable. That of awareness, of women who read in secret, who dared to dream of different lives, who are beginning to question their role, their rights, the true meaning of union. Even in a time when sexual education was non-existent and the word desire was almost a sin, there were seeds of rebellion and flashes of resistance. Today, rereading those rights, those manuals, those absurdities, and those dramas does not mean laughing or judging, but understanding. Because every sheet hung out, every merkin purchased, every superstition held are nothing more than fragments of a great collective narrative, that of the human being who searches for love, acceptance, meaning. Knowing the past, even in its darkest or most bizarre aspects, is an act of respect for those who came before us. It is also a way to understand how far we have come and how much remains to be done. Thank you for walking with us through the dimly lit halls of the Victorian era. If these stories have made you think, moved you, or even just made you curious, leave a comment, a thought, a question. History, after all, lives only if it continues to be told.